It might have taken 3 tries, but we're finally running the Penn Mile. Let's talk about this race on NYRA Bets. Hi, everyone. Matthew DeSantis here with NYRA Bets. Here with a preview of Friday night's Penn Mile taking place at Penn National. Before we get to that, I want to remind you to press that like button and subscribe to NYRA Bets YouTube today. Subscribing is entirely free of cost. Just notifies you when new videos drop on the channel, whether those are race previews, full card analyses, handicapping and betting tutorials, weekly programs, and so much more. We're your one-stop shop for everything horse racing and handicapping as we get ready for Saratoga. So make sure to press that like and subscribe button today. All right. Well, like I said, they've been trying to run this Penn Mile for a little while now. And for one reason or another, due to weather, it's been pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. But third time's the charm. They're going to be running it this Friday night at Penn National, a track that is near and dear to my heart. It's the first time I ever saw live racing. My dad took me there when I was about 11 years old, placed a couple of bets, made a little bit of money, been playing the ponies ever since. So love Penn National, a track that's near and dear to my heart, and grew up about 40 minutes from there in Reading, Pennsylvania. So listen, this is a really interesting race. We're going to talk about some of the dynamics going on in this race, talk about some of the top contenders, maybe where you can find a little bit of value potentially in this race, ways to play it, particularly both vertically and horizontally. So like I said, we're going to try to approach it from all different angles. But let's dive into this field of 8 runners. And obviously you have to start with your favorite, Zulu Kingdom, for trainer Chad Brown. This is a horse coming out of a grade 1 victory last time out in the American Turf at Churchill Downs. And a horse that I think really has shown progress and maturity. Broke its maiden over in Europe for the trainer Andre Fabre, and then came over to North America for Chad Brown. And I saw him win that with anticipation. I saw him win that Pilgrim. And what he did both times, with Flavian aboard one time, with Joel Rosario aboard another time, was he made a nice move to get into the lead. And then he kind of looked around a little bit, and he kind of had his ears kind of going all over the place. And you could tell he was kind of waiting for somebody else to challenge him. And when he got to the lead, he didn't have that maybe killer instinct of really putting away a field. And so he ended up winning both of those, but just by a neck. He was never in fear of losing either race, but maybe did not win it as dominantly as you would hope. Goes out to Del Mar, runs, a disappointing 7th, obviously. It went off as a 4-1 choice that day, won by a horse like Henri Matisse, who's an outstanding horse. We just saw run at Royal Ascot last week. So a little bit of a disappointing effort there at Del Mar, but came back this year, winning that Columbia Stakes down at Tampa Bay, and then coming back and really winning that American Turf, I thought, in very convincing fashion. He's shown a lot of versatility. He can close from mid-pack. He can go up right out in the lead and track the pace if the pace is going to be slow. So he can do a lot of things, and I think that versatility makes him very, very tough in this spot. He also has just kind of continued to take a step forward as a 3-year-old. That 90 buyer speed figure last time out really towers over the rest of this field. Now, granted, if you draw a line through that race, maybe you go, well, his other efforts aren't that much better than anyone else. Certainly a horse like Dream On for Mark Casse has also run a 90 buyer speed figure, but that was one time at Woodbine in the summer stakes as a 2-year-old, and hasn't quite got back to that form, even though he's gotten a couple of wins as a 3-year-old. So if you look at that American Turf as maybe a little over the top, or maybe this horse, might not be able to replicate that effort, then perhaps you want to play against him. But at 7-5 on the morning line, he looks like a really tough horse to face in this spot, and just has gone up against tougher competition than what he's facing here. So for me, he's a top choice, and he's a single. And if you're going to be attacking this from a horizontal standpoint, it's important to point out this actually kicks off the pick 6, if I'm not mistaken, and the Penn pick 5. So you get the Penn pick 5, you can get a single just to start things off right there with the very first leg, and maybe that allows you to be a little bit more creative. But I do think you can get creative underneath in this race, because Mi Bago, who's the second choice, I'm a little against this horse. Sired by Vekoma, Mark Casse trainee, ran 4th in that American Turf, and only lost by about 2 lengths, and did all the dirty work up front, but was also able to get clear up front. And I think that's a really important point to make, that Mi Bago always gets clear up front, and then he always kind of fades. Yes, he won that Colonel Liam in gate-to-wire fashion. He won the Dania Beach on the synthetic in gate-to-wire fashion. He won the Pulpit in gate-to-wire fashion, but this is a much tougher test. And as he has stepped up to face more difficult horses, he hasn't necessarily been able to hold on the front end the way that he has in the past. Now, to be fair to him, he won that Algonquin at 5 furlongs at Woodbine coming off the pace. So he can pass horses. But again, that was going 5 furlongs in a sprint. He just naturally has outstanding speed. Irad Ortiz Jr. up on the mount. And he's one that is going to be tough. But, and I think this is an important distinction to make, if you look at Panagiotis, the number 3 horse, for Dimitros Sinofias, that is a horse that also has outstanding early speed and is stretching out from sprinting. And I don't know if Panagiotis has any chance at all of actually challenging Mi Bago, but he's got the early speed to be able to do it. You also have a horse like Out on Bail who's stretching out from 5.5 furlongs, who we're going to touch on in a second. So I think Mi Bago might have some company up front, or at least not be able to get as loose on the lead as he normally does. Vacomas, I like Vacoma as a sire, but I do wonder about, getting the 2 turns consistently. He's been able to get it in the past, but again, I just wonder about that distance influence. I think a mile is probably his max, but again, I think the dynamics of this race might be set up a little bit against him. And as I've mentioned before, Irad Ortiz Jr., I'm sometimes a little wary of Irad on the front end. I should note that, he was aboard him in that Colonel Liam where he did go gate to wire, was able to kind of get things his own way up front that day. But sometimes I do wonder about Irad's internal clock and whether or not he maybe goes a little too fast sometimes, and then Mi Bago kind of comes back to the rest of the field. And you have some really nice horses in here with the closing kick. Now, I mentioned a horse like Out on Bail, and I think this is where you could maybe get a little creative underneath. And this is a horse 6-1 on the morning line from Mike Maker. Listen, Mike Maker stretching a horse out on the turf, that's usually a surefire recipe to play for and to play with. And this is a horse sired by Tiz the Law. Now, Tiz the Law, really nice sire. I'm a huge fan of Tiz the Law as a horse, but also love the way he started off his sire career. And one of the things you've seen is that his horses and his progeny have really done well on the turf. In fact, they're winning 18% of turf routes to this point, 11 for 60. So he's turned out quite a few turf runners, really impressive turf runners. When I talked to the folks at Coolmore earlier this spring, they were talking about how this wasn't necessarily surprising, that they expected him to be a really effective horse and sire on both surfaces, and he has been. And it should be noted that, his horses and his offspring tend to do better as they stretch out. So as the races get longer, they tend to do a little bit better. I think Tiz the Law is a tremendous turf influence going 2 turns here. And so even though this horse is stretching out from 5.5, he also has an off-the-pace running style. He doesn't need to get to the lead. He can pass horses. He demonstrated that in a few different races, particularly that Indian Summer 2 back at Keeneland back last fall. And now he's second back from a layoff. Manny Franco hops aboard. He's ridden this horse before. In fact, ridden him 3 times before. I think this one, yes, he's a New York bred. Yes, maybe he's facing a little bit tougher company, but I think the stretch out to 2 turns, I think the natural speed that he's had, I think he's going to be able to track a horse like Mi Bago, who he draws to the outside of. I just like the way this horse is progressing. And at 6-1, you're getting a little bit of a price. Now, Dream On for Mark Casse, another very nice horse. I mean, Casse has so many nice runners this year, I think, particularly on the turf. Obviously, we talk about Nitrogen and Vixen for the fillies, but, Dream On is a very nice horse for the boys. And coming off a win in that Woodhaven Stakes at Aqueduct last time out, has a little bit of a break here, likely due to the fact that they were always targeting this race and it just got pushed back about a month or so. But it's been training beautifully leading up to this race. Great pedigree in terms of not this time up top out of a discreet cat mare. He does have that one big buyer speed figure this summer where he ran a 90, ran 3rd that day actually. But outside of that, he hasn't really turned in eye-popping speed figures. You look at 78, 76, 77. He really has not done anything to make him stand out among the other runners in this race. And so that's why I have him 3rd. I think he's a really nice horse. I would not be shocked at all if he ran well. I think he obviously will run into the money, but I'm a little bit against him as a top choice just because I don't know if he can get over the top the way he has in the past in terms of that running that big figure. So little concerned about him in this spot. He's already matched up against Zulu Kingdom 2 back in that Columbia and was thoroughly beaten, although that was maybe not a course to his liking. It was just switching off Lasix a little bit outside that day. So, maybe you can make a couple of excuses. Obviously came back to win that Woodhaven next time out. But again, that was against a lesser field, to be perfectly fair. So, like I said, Dream On, I have 3rd. And then a horse that I have 4th that I think could run pretty well is Cherie DeVos' horse States Rights. Jose Ortiz aboard. This one, again, only has that one maiden win, but has been running well against Allowance Company, running against horses like Macero and Flying Mohawk, who we saw in the Kentucky Derby, who's actually coming back to the turf this weekend, I believe, down at Churchill Downs. So that's going to be exciting. This is a horse that, again, I think Cherie, and Jose Ortiz, that's such a strong combination. Jose seems to, again, ride well for her in this spot. You like the pedigree in terms of a constitution up top out of a Pioneer, the Nile Dam. So there's plenty to like there in terms of this the turf. And again, if you take away the 90 buyer speed figure from Dream On and States Rights have nearly identical buyer speed figures. And one of them is over two times the price of the other, nearly two times the price of the other, I should say. So I think that you can look at a horse like States Rights at 8-1 and go, hey, that's an interesting horse maybe to throw in underneath. Also, there might be some speed in this race with Panagiotis, with Mi Bago, with Out on Bail. Even a horse like Zulu Kingdom's got good natural speed, and Dream On has got good natural speed. So maybe they go a little too fast. And if they do, a horse like States Rights makes a lot of sense coming from off the pace, big closing kick, can really unleash that stride. So a horse like States Rights at 8-1 could absolutely make some sense in this field. My official picks, because we got to have that up, right? I'm officially going 7-5-8-1, going Zulu Kingdom over Out on Bail, over Dream On, over States Rights. That's how I'm going to be playing it. I think Mi Bago is kind of the play against for me. I certainly a very good horse, but I just at that 7-2 price on the morning line, maybe a little bit too much company up front. I think a horse like that fades. Maybe you can catch a little bit more of a price underneath, but that's how I'll be playing it on NYRA Bets. Now, listen, you want to make sure to opt in and play all of our great promotions that we have every day on NYRA Bets. We have a really fun exacta bonus over the weekend, 10%, I think, exacta bonus. So you definitely want to opt into those and make sure to play the Penn Mile on NYRA Bets. All right. Well, folks, thanks so much for tuning in. My name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and prosperous day at the races and reminding you, friends, it's now post time.